What is up? What is up? I am here on time. Last week we had a bit of technical issues. I was an hour late, but this time didn't get me today. I was well prepared. Have a little ice pack for my computer that gets hot, but I'm here and I'm on time and we gonna finna do this. First, let me know if you can actually hear me. Am I just talking to myself? Let me know in the chat if you can actually hear me. I told my partner to join the chat, and I was like, "Let me know." It's so formal. Hello, Francis. I'm here. I can hear you. I always tend to default to medieval times or some British accent. Anyway, I'm so glad that you can hear me. We're just gonna get started. Thank you for being here tonight, and I'll get into what we're gonna talk about and what the next few lives are going to look like. I might wait a little bit. Should I wait a little bit? Nah, we just gonna get started. I got a lot to say tonight. You know what I'm saying? Which is a rarity. No, I'm bugging. All right, let's roll. Ever find yourself just looking around and wondering, how did I end up in a life that doesn't even feel like mine? So you see me go back and forth so I can check the chat sometimes. If you've been feeling that way lately, I want you to know it's okay. Some of you might not be feeling like that. Maybe some of you aren't even lost at all. You're right where you need to be, and that's beautiful. But I'm speaking to those who might be feeling a little uncertain right now. So here's something I want to share with you right now. You're not lost because you don't have direction, because that could definitely feel like that. You're feeling lost because part of you has outgrown this life, but another part of you is terrified to let it go. So that restlessness that you're feeling, the way nothing quite fits anymore, it's not just a quarter life or midlife crisis. I've definitely been in that moment where I felt like, Francis, are you having a midlife crisis right now? It's really just your soul waking up, pushing back against a life that was never truly yours to begin with. Let me just adjust something real quick here. Oh, about that. One day I'm gonna get it together, y'all. So maybe it just shows up in small moments like you're sitting in your car after work, and not wanting to go inside even your own home, or maybe you just don't want to go inside work. I've had those moments. Or maybe you're scrolling through like other jobs trying to find something, and you're looking at these jobs and you're like, I don't even want that. Maybe you're hoping something will spark maybe a flicker of interest. Maybe you catch yourself looking at your partner and thinking, I love you, but I don't even know who I am anymore. So if any of that resonates, please let yourself feel that. Maybe you've just built a life trying to do whatever felt safe, what looked right, what others approved of, and now your authentic self, they're quietly but fiercely starting to rebel. So here's a little invitation. If this is hitting close to home, definitely let me know in the chat. If you've been quietly questioning everything, feeling like a stranger in your own life, then you are at the right place. Hey, beautiful people, if you're someone who feels deeply, thinks deeply, who's been sitting with that sense of being lost, not just like the surface stuff, but that kind of loss that kind of shakes your whole sense of self, then you are in the right space. Welcome to the first episode of a 5-part series that's called When You Feel Lost, a Guide to Self-Trust and Life Transitions. Many of us might be going through a bunch of life transitions. We're trying to figure out how to navigate that, um, especially in a way that allows you to trust yourself to make the next step and to move through some of these life transitions in a more authentic and grounded way. Let's check over here. So feeling lost can often get a bad rap in our culture. right? Like it means you have nothing going for yourself or that you're failing at life somehow. But really, it's more like a chrysalis. It's a necessary breakdown before a new, stronger sense of self can actually emerge. So we're here to hold a different conversation, one that normalizes this experience, because a lot of us are going to move through this experience sometimes in multiple ways and different points along the way. And so this is an experience that invites you to move through this journey with intention and most importantly, compassion, with a perspective that maybe you've never heard before. So this series isn't about goal setting or manifesting dreams. I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube channels out there for that. And that stuff is great. Like, I'm all about that. But when you're feeling a bit lost, it's not about what you haven't done, it's more about who you are, your identity, and your meaning. So think of this as an invitation to just, rewrite the script that you've been living by, to give yourself permission to sit with the discomfort of the in between, and to be okay with not having all of the answers right now. And along the way, I'll share some questions and reframes to help you move from surface agitation to embodying a deeper confidence, compassion, and self understanding. So if that feels like what you need right now, let me know in the comments. If you're a part of the replay gang, let me know you're watching the replay. So, my hope for you is this: if you've been feeling burdened by uncertainty or shame around not knowing, you start to see it for what it really is, which is intelligence. A sign that this seemingly tough situation, as uncomfortable as it feels, is actually taking you somewhere important, somewhere beautiful. And if you're already feeling stuck in this space and want some gentle, practical guidance to move through it, I created a free mini course to help you work through any resistance that you might be feeling instead of fighting it. And I'll drop the link in the description and chat a little bit about it later. But for now, what this series, now you know what this series is and what it isn't. So let's get grounded by looking at what feeling loss actually looks like, because it's often so much more than just a feeling of confusion. All right. Get some water. All right. So let's start by painting a picture of what this actually looks like, because many people might be quietly wondering, like, okay, if I, what is it? What does it look like? They might be wondering, am I the only one experiencing this? And if you think that's you, let me know. But your body actually might be sending you signals that are really quite easy to overlook. Maybe you're waking up exhausted even after what should be a full night's rest. You're like, I'm sleeping, I'm getting rest, but why do I feel extra tired? Maybe you catch yourself, kind of tightening up or holding your breath in conversations without realizing it. Maybe your shoulders, like right now, my shoulders are like this. I gotta relax them a little bit. Maybe your shoulders are holding some sort of tight tension that, a simple stretch might not be able to release. Check in with yourself. Has your body been telling you something? And maybe you're just not listening in a way that allows you to connect a bit deeper. Feel free to share that. Maybe food tastes differently. Like I'm in a space where I'm like, man, nothing is satisfying right now, even for me, right? Maybe even your favorite shows or movies, they no longer capture your interest. Like you just emotionally, it might feel like you're here, but not really present. Maybe you smile out and about when you're hanging out, but inside, you're feeling a bit of loneliness. And maybe you're accomplished things that once kind of made you feel good, made you feel proud, but now they feel pretty empty, maybe even hollow. Maybe you achieved a goal that you worked really hard for, and your immediate thought is this really it? Right? Is this all there is to it? And mentally, it might feel like your thoughts are a bit fuzzy or dull. I went through a space of just having a bit of mental fog for quite a while. Part of that's because my iron was low, but another part of that was just I was just in a state of confusion for a while. And I'll talk about like, we're going to talk about the void a little bit later, and I'll share more ideas about that. But you get to a point where like the simple choices that you're making, whether it's like what to wear, what to eat, what to watch, just suddenly feel overwhelming. And so you start doubting yourself more and more than usual, because nothing feels quite authentic anymore. I don't know if you've felt this mental fog, and if you have, just let me know in the chat or in the comments. But here's the paradox: when you look at your life on paper, it seems stable, right? You may have a steady job, like decent relationships, even a home. And so you start to wonder, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just accept this thing, this life that I built? And you see others who seem pretty content with similar lives, right? And you wonder, maybe, am I feeling ungrateful? But like, what's really going on? And so here's what's really happening. Okay. You've outgrown the version of yourself that you created to survive and maybe to even fit in, the version of you that sort of learned how to be loved, maybe how to succeed, how to stay safe by adapting to your environment and the expectations around you. So, but now the way of being no longer fits who you truly are. Can you relate to that feeling of outgrowing your old self? Just let me know. And psychologically, this is a natural tension between two parts of you. There's one part that adapted to get by, to be accepted, to be successful, to stay safe. And then your true part, your true self, I'm sorry, is the second part. That part knows what you really want and need and value. And so your adapted self, that's what in psychology, that's what they call it, the adapted self, but your adapted self did its job well for a very long time. But now your authentic self is starting to speak up, it's starting to loosen things up. And often it starts quietly, and it usually happens for a while, right? And we tend to ignore a lot of the signs. And I remember this for myself. Like I went through that period, and it was for a long while. Like I was in that void, in that space. But I was in that space of agitation, and a lot of it was, and I know you guys have heard me talk about my just burning out, but it was like this deep sense of unhappiness, of sort of just watching myself live a life that I was severely disconnected from. And I was deeply unhappy. And I realized that I couldn't, something had to change. And the things that I thought I wanted, I didn't want anymore. Right. The relationships that, or the friendships that I was in, felt foreign and strange to me. So it wasn't just like one area of my life that felt totally uprooted. Everything around me just started to crack and crack and crack. And I literally felt like, because no one else around me, well, it didn't seem like anyone else was kind of going through the same thing. And I was like, okay, like like who do I talk to about this? Because maybe something is off with me, because I worked so hard to get to where I thought I wanted to be, only to realize this wasn't it. Right. And so there's a lot that goes into watching pieces of your life just start to crumble bit by bit by bit. And you don't have the articulation, the language to kind of figure out like what's going on. And then there's no one around you to help mirror what's happening, right? Because often, I mean, I was finding people around me who were pretty satisfied with their lives, which is, this is great, right? And then I found people who were around me who weren't really satisfied, but they just kind of settled. And I couldn't settle. I really couldn't settle. And I found my authentic self started to rebel. And for me, it looked a little bit like this. It looked like for the last year of my job, I was coming in late. I was leaving early. I was just doing enough to get by. Like I was meeting with my clients, that was all in good. But being part of the system, I literally felt like I was living in a vacuum, like in a tunnel. And I was definitely felt like the walls were closing in on me. And the anxiety started to build, to creep in, and also the depression started to creep in. So, but let's continue a little bit. So when you're in this space, imagine your nervous system is like a car alarm going off with different noises cycling to just get your attention. That could be your body right now, right? Its role is to keep you safe. And you hear me say this often in this channel because it's a huge part of the journey. I remember meeting a client who when we were in session, very teary, cried a lot, and it was hard to just have a conversation. And I had asked her, have you done any nervous system work? And, one of the questions I always ask clients is like, have you met with a therapist before? Or have you met with a coach before? Those kinds of things. And she has had done some therapy, but she's never done any nervous system work. And I was like, girl, you've got to do some nervous system work. Right. And that's sort of the work that we're doing. But this a huge part of the shift is nervous system work. So I'm always weaving this in as I talk with you guys because it's something that doesn't always get looked at, but it definitely, I always say that the way that you look at the world is through your nervous system, through the lens of your nervous system. And so, like I said, its role is to keep you safe. And when it senses any kind of threat, it literally triggers your fight or flight. Maybe your heart beats faster, maybe your muscles tighten, and then your focus narrows because you can't see anything outside of kind of like the threat that is in front of you. But here's the challenge of that. Again, you're caught between two parts of yourself, right? One part wants to leave behind a life that doesn't feel right. And the other part is scared of what you might lose: security, relationships, your sense of who you've been, right? So you're stuck in between, neither fully alarmed or fully calm, like having one foot on the gas and the other on the brake. So you're ready to move, but you're frozen in place. You're alert, but you're tired, right? You're exhausted. You're prepared to act, but you're stuck deciding how. And so if you're feeling stuck between wanting to change and fearing it, drop stuck in the chat. Let me know if that's where you're at. And that's why everything might be feeling unsettling right now. You're not only deciding what to do next, you're making choices as your whole sense of self shifts beneath you. It's like trying to read a map while the ground is moving beneath you, right? You can't focus. And if this is resonating, definitely take a deep breath. You're navigating more than you actually realize. And if you're feeling heavier than before, my 30 Days to Lightness companion guide can be a perfect companion to reset your daily rhythm. And the Resistance Reset Free mini course can walk you through any blocks that you're experiencing. All right, so now that you've unpacked what's really happening beneath the surface, it makes sense as to why a lot of the usual advice just doesn't land. Sometimes it even backfires, right? So let's just talk about some of the common responses and why they sort of miss the mark. And so that you can, when they're said to you, you'll know exactly, you'll know what I mean, because you probably might have heard a lot of this stuff as you're kind of going through this process. But when you tell people that, listen, I'm feeling lost, all right, and I'll share something like my partner. I would always have this conversation with her and be like, and this was kind of years ago. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what I'm here for. It was be always these existential crises kind of moments conversation with her because, and I would have them like every couple of months, and she would just be like, all right, what is it now? Like, she has a lot of patience with me. But I would continue to have these conversations because I was in that space. I was in the void. And I realized through the process of being in the void, which I'm going to talk about again a little bit later, is that it's part of being in the void is sitting with what the void is trying to tell you. And I know that sounds a little bit esoteric, and it's going to make sense as we continue to go through this process. But I would always have these conversations with her, and she was just like, just be like, just live your life, and it will unfold. The answers will come as you sort of just decide on something, right? But we're going to talk a little bit later about like making sometimes it's hard to make these decisions when you're in this space. So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I think she's laughing at me, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, when you tell people you feel lost, here's what they usually say: just figure out what you want. Okay, right? If I could do that, we wouldn't be here. Some people say, maybe make a mood board now. Back in the day, they called it vision board, but with Pinterest. I don't even know if Pinterest is a thing, but is it Pinterest still a thing? Anyway, they say make a vision board. Or they say, like, set some goals. Like, if you have some goals, then, everything will feel all right. Or they'll say something like, find your passion, right? Or take a personality test, right? And let me tell you, I've taken all the personality tests. I've taken the DISC assessment. I've taken the Big Five personality. I'm going to name them all for you. I've taken the Enneagram. I've even taken human design. And granted, it gave me a lot of insight. I was like, ooh, that makes sense, right? I have found my life path numbers, all those things. And it started to make sense. And they can be helpful, right? They can be helpful as a starting point if you've never taken them. But you're also a complex being, right? And so these personality tests don't have, a lot of these things don't have the nuances that that you actually need because it's not like a lived experience, right? So it's good to take them for fun and you take them with a grain of salt. And I've noticed some themes even for myself, which had I known beforehand, I don't know if I would have implemented them because I don't know if I was in the space to receive that kind of information. I'll give you an example. So when I took was it the Enneagram? I don't know. But when I found out what my life path number is, which is a 5, it's all about adventure, being nomadic, freedom, and that makes sense because that's how I live my life now. Had I taken that 10 years ago, I don't know if I would have like been open to it, you know, because there'd been so much fear there to take that kind of risk that I hadn't dealt with. And so like setting goals, finding a passion. Another one is maybe you just need a vacation. Some of these things will give you a reset, but if you don't get to the depths of what's underneath some of those fears, then this kind of advice is not going to make sense to you. It's going to be hard to connect with something visually, right? As something like make a vision board or a mood board, if you're still having a hard time even connecting to a vision, if you're in the state of confusion. And so I say, what if the real challenge isn't about knowing what you want, but that the part of you that used to want things is shifting? So if I had looked at those things back then versus who I am now, they could relate because who I was then is a completely different person, right? And so the old version of you can't connect to those things, right? Because it's shifting, it's changing, right? It's something that you could revisit later, right? Oh, from Brazil. What's going on, Isabella? Thanks for being here. Brazil's on our list. Me and my partner, we want to head to Brazil one day. One day. Yeah. Oh, my partner says Brazil, not Brazil, sorry. Pinterest is still a thing. I'm sure it is. All right. So the next thing is, when you're in the middle of this kind of change, piling on the pressure to figure it out only weighs you down more. Your system is already stretched thin, right? And now there's this rush to solve something that needs its own time to unfold, okay? And so this advice assumes you should be asking, what do I want to do? But the real question is, who am I when I'm not performing, pleasing, or proving myself? And that's a much harder question. And it can't be answered with just like a weekend workshop or even just this live alone, right? You got to do a bit more digging. Another thing that you might experience is that you're going to get the spiritual advice, right? Trust the universe. Just trust the universe, right? Everything happens for a reason. My favorite, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Granted, I say these things and I believe these things, but I couldn't believe them 10 years ago, right? You tell me to trust the universe, I'm going to look at you like, what you mean? I don't even trust myself. If I don't even trust myself and my decisions, my relationships, or any of those things, how can I trust something as magnificent as the universe, right? And then everything happens for a reason. Okay, well, but why is it happening to me, right? Like when you're in the midst of those things, it's hard to connect to the idea that there's a reason for this, right? Especially if it's making you feel bad. Now in the space that I am, because I've done a bit of healing work, I can make those connections. And when I look back at my life, and I'm like, oh, that's why that happened, right? That's why I took that detour. Oh, this is what the divine was trying to have me avoid. And so I don't even question that the things that are happening, I don't question them at all because I know it's a part of a greater design. And you're exactly where you're supposed to be. What if that place that you're in is not a place that you want to be, right? So it's not something that you can actually fully hear or fully absorb. Now I can, for me, I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. And when I look back, every decision and every circumstance that I was in, those were the places that I needed to be, right? And so, again, these kinds of advice, they're not wrong, but it's not helpful when you're in the middle of an identity dissolution and you need like practical tools to navigate, right? And so it's just something to just keep in mind and know that we live in a culture that is obsessed with action, obsessed with action. When I tell my clients to do less, they're just like, holy smack. Like they have a hard time, right? Because there's so much conditioning and so many layers that have to be peeled away to get to a space where taking less action actually doesn't feel threatening to your nervous system. Let me check in the chat. Isabella says a bit of a spiritual bypass if these statements come without the depth of exploration and allows for frustration to be felt along with the trusting. Boom. Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And part of this, which I'll get into later, is not skipping the steps, right? Thank you for that insight, Isabella. And so, we live in a culture that's obsessed with action. Don't just sit there, do something. But sometimes this isn't the time to do more, especially when your identity and all the things around you are just starting to fall away. It's really the time to stop and really be with what's happening inside of you. And that sounds a bit esoteric. And what I mean by just really be, meaning allowing everything to show itself without trying to distract it, without trying to change it, and even without trying to find meaning behind it, right? Because the ego loves to find meaning behind things because it makes it feel like, oh, okay, I feel safe, right? False sense of safety. So it's about just really allowing the things to come up because we spent most likely a number of years avoiding, distracting, numbing, and not feeling and doing all these things. And I can totally relate to a lot of this stuff. That's why I'm able to talk to you all about this. But uh, it's allowing yourself to be in that space, right? And the deeper issue is all this advice is trying to also get you back to a stable identity as quickly as possible. But what if the instability isn't the problem? What if the instability is the process, right? And I don't see it as instability. I just see it as a journey to allow the illusions to fall away so that you can actually step into who you're supposed to be, who you've been all along, right? When we look at in traditional cultures, identity transitions were honored with rituals, with lots of community support and time. You were allowed to explore some of those things, right? Even now, I mean, then and now, there are vision quests, there are spiritual initiations. And so now we've kind of lost a lot of that. Now we just expect people to just figure it out on their own and just get back to productivity as fast as possible. And so our culture treats uncertainty and questioning like problems to be fixed instead of journeys to be honored. Normal life transitions actually get medicalized, right? Not every period of confusion needs a label or some sort of fix or even some sort of diagnosis, right? Some of this stuff is just part of the evolution, right? And so this isn't a problem that your mind can just solve alone. That's perfectly okay, right? Identity isn't just a mental construct, it's an emotional, physical, it's relational, it's spiritual. It takes more than thinking to find your way, okay? And so the idea that there's a single right choice out there can actually freeze you in place, making every decision feel impossibly heavy. You know, what if you pick wrong, right? What if you waste time? What if you disappoint people? And we'll dive into how to navigate this in episode 2. But for now, just know this paralysis isn't a flaw, it's really a normal part of the transformation. I always say everything that you experience emotionally, physically, all of it is feedback if we embrace it as an opportunity to just dig a little bit deeper. And so when you're in this journey, in this process, you either force yourself to get back into life that doesn't fit, or you kind of just spin your wheels trying to optimize your way to clarity. Either way, you still feel stuck, like trying to keep running while carrying some sort of like heavy load that you weren't really meant to carry. I hope this is all making sense. Let me grab some water. All right, so let's gently explore how you might have come to feel disconnected from your life. This isn't something that happens overnight, right? This is a story that started earlier on. You already know all this stuff is just childhood stuff that's just resurfacing in different ways. As children, we learned what gets us love, attention, and safety. Maybe you learned that being helpful earned praise or being quiet kept the peace. That was me. I had to stay quiet in an emotionally abusive and verbally abusive household. I had to stay quiet and just be that quiet kid that didn't, ruffle any feathers because that was safety for me, right? And so as long as I didn't cause any trouble, I was okay. But part of that quietness led into my adult life, and I had to alchemize that, right? Because I knew that being in that bubble wasn't going to help my journey. And I had to find ways to get out of my shell and make it feel safe for me, right? Um, let's see what else. Isabella says it all makes sense. The churning is real. It is real, and you could be here for a little bit. For some of us, for me, it lasted a few years. And you'll find that through this conversation, it evolves over time. It's not something that completely goes away because you evolve over time, right? Um, and also maybe as children, let's go back to children. Maybe as children, maybe achievement became a way to feel valued. I have a lot of clients who are overachievers who really had the perfect plan, and a lot of that came crashing. Especially when you hit the 30s, 35, 40s, you start to have a real reckoning, right? I don't know if can you recall something from your childhood that shaped how you show up today? Only if you feel comfortable, right? But your mind and your body are incredibly adaptive. They learn the rules of your environment that built an identity designed to keep you safe and connected. And this wasn't a conscious choice, right? It's how your nervous system learned to navigate life. And so then school reinforced those patterns. Sit still, be quiet, follow instructions, right? The conditioning, the programming, compete for approval. And the message was very clear. Your value often felt tied to how well you performed. When you entered the workforce, you may have found yourself choosing what looked impressive, what paid well, what felt really secure, even if it didn't inspire you anymore, even if it felt like this isn't even something I want to do, but I got to pay the bills, right? And I totally get that. And I'm not shaming anyone for that. I definitely went through that process. It's risky to step outside of that world. It feels risky. And I always say, well, what is the trade-off, right? What is it going to cost you? And you'll find that, let me look at the chat. I am on my late 50s and the training has been happening for 8 years. The unlearning. Yeah. And the conditioning, there's layers to it all, right? Um, but it's definitely possible, and I'll share how later. But when you're in this journey, even relationships often follow a similar pattern. You learn to be the person who's easy to love, right? Maybe the accommodating one or the one who keeps their needs quiet. That version of yourself was rewarded with connection, right? And now, with social media amplifying everything, the pressure to perform or present a polished version of yourself can actually feel pretty overwhelming. Like you're living for others more than for who you truly are. And then something shifts, right? Like I said, a reckoning. It might be a big event, a milestone, birthday, a health scare, a loss, or it could just be a slow, steady feeling that something isn't quite right. And you start to ask, is this really my life? For me, it was several things. It was like, and sometimes it's compounded. Sometimes it's several things that are happening back to back. For me, it was burnout first, then it was loss after loss after loss. And then it was a big move, and it was like community shifts, friendships change. It was so many different things that my life just started to chip away. Like everything just fell apart and disappeared. And I was just left with myself to figure out, like, okay, what is really happening here on a deeper level? What am I being invited to on a deeper level? Right. I don't know if that inner conflict feels familiar. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Just let me know in the chat or comments. And so this tension doesn't just happen in your head. Again, it shows up physically, right? You might feel tired, tense, or disconnected. It can actually affect your relationships too, because people might be confused by your new boundaries or unsure about your changing values, right? So I remember when I went through the process of just like that whole confusion, I was just so confused with life, right? And I started to just pull back. I started to just withdraw from friendship groups and all this, and I literally fell off the face of the earth. And I remember like not not being really fully aware of kind of like why or what was going on. I just know I needed space. I needed a lot of space to think, to feel, to reconnect. But I couldn't verbalize that. So in hindsight, I wish I was able to communicate that to other people so that they understand it was had nothing to do with them. But I kind of like ghosted a lot of people, and I had to reconcile with some of that with different people. And what I realized is that if you're in that space, as hard as it can be, is to share that. I have a client who, was always the one that was on top socially. Like, I mean, she just had everything together. And she had a huge network of people, but she found herself just kind of withdrawing and ignoring people and all these things because she was realizing that she no longer had the capacity or the energetic capacity that she used to have. And it frightened her because she was like, who am I transforming into? Part of her liked this self that was trying to emerge. It felt quieter, it felt a bit more stable, it just felt a bit more steady. And what I told her was that it just felt more authentic. That's what was going on. Whoever she was previously wasn't the authentic person. I mean, it worked for the time being. And so she is going through this process of like pulling back and having these really hard conversations with the people around her. And through these past couple months, she came in with like this heaviness, like always in a funk kind of energy, to feeling so much lighter because now she was actually honoring her own capacity. She was honoring her needs. And that made other people uncomfortable. It's going to. But it almost felt like this heavy burden just was lifted because she's not the same person. And a lot of us, it's important for us to understand when we are shifting, right? That we are not the same people. And when we try to bring the old version of ourselves to keep up, and this other version of ourselves is trying to emerge, that's where all that conflict happens. That's where like the exhaustion, the irritability, depression, the anxiety, all that stuff starts to bubble up because we're not honoring ourselves, right? And so what signals is your body sending you right now? If you're noticing, definitely feel free to share. And there's also grief there too, right? I went through a whole grieving process just in how everything transitioned, how I just lost my entire community group and had to sort of rebuild that process through the version of me that was trying to emerge versus the old version of me that was there, right? And so that loss, the loss of the version of yourself that you carried this far, even if that life wasn't fully right, it was familiar and it brought a kind of stability for you. So letting go can actually be pretty painful. And so it's giving yourself the moment to kind of like grieve that process and um, honor the journey of that, right? And if you're carrying some of that grief, definitely know that you are seen and understood. Okay. All right. So remember when we talked about feeling like things aren't really fitting anymore, that sense of restlessness um, and discomfort? So let's actually break down what that actually looks like over time. So there are three stages people commonly move through as they outgrow an old version of themselves. And knowing these can actually make the process feel a little clearer. So we're going to talk about those three stages now. So the first stage, I call it the loosening, when your old operating system starts to glitch, right? And I like using a computer as an analogy because often when you get a computer, you have the default system, but sometimes we add certain things to enhance it. And so you are similar to that, right? You come with a default system and it's up to you to remove, to add, to do things that are going to enhance you in a way that gives you a much better quality of life. But the first stage is the loosening, is when the drive and the motivation that you once had starts to like just fade away, right? It's as if the way you've been running your life is literally losing its rhythm, right? And so you might go through the motions, but you feel pretty disconnected, like you're just watching your own life from a distance. You're like, there I am, making all those decisions, moving about, but it not really feeling connected, right? And many people begin to panic here. And so they try to push harder, right? They're forcing motivation or they're doubling down on old habits. Uh, Maybe they are, because they're noticing they're withdrawing from their community or friend groups, they double book themselves and they try to be everything to everybody, right? And sometimes a break feels like the answer, but when you return to yourself, nothing's changed. You pull away, you come back, you do that sort of bouncing back and forth thing, right? And so what's really happening is that the part of you that's been holding everything together, again, it's loosening its grip. And what it's doing is it's making room for something new to actually grow. And if this sounds familiar, let me know. Let me know what used to motivate you that no longer does. You might notice the changes in your body again, the restlessness, strange sleep patterns, shifts in appetite, or even desire. Relationships begin to feel off too. Conversations may begin to feel a bit shallow. You might want more space, even if it confuses you and others, like I mentioned earlier. Work might be losing its meaning, whether it's like projects, meetings, all of them just start to feel pointless because you're so disconnected from it. It doesn't drive you anymore, right? You might even daydream about completely different paths that don't even make sense just yet. I remember a few years ago, and actually, I still daydream about this. I'm like, I just want to go live on an island somewhere, and my closest neighbor is a tree. Okay, I just want to be in the middle of the jungle somewhere, just enjoying nature and just be at peace with the birds. Um, so that's what I daydream about sometimes. But then I realized I only want that temporarily and I want to come back into the world and connect. But this first stage is absolutely necessary. Think of it like the first cracks that signal that the old is ready to give way. Okay. And if you're experiencing this stage, definitely let me know. Stage two is what I remember I talked about, the void, when you feel like you don't know who you are anymore. And I was in a void for a long time. Okay. A long time. And then when I met my mentor and she explained to me what the void was, and I was like, huh. And when I would have those conversations with my partner that I mentioned earlier, that was me being in the void. And now I feel like I'm coming out of that void or I'm out of that void. I have to kind of reflect on that a little bit. But The void is the part where it's hardest to recognize yourself. Your old interests no longer call to you. You're really not sure what's next, right? Big questions surface like, what do I really want? What do I truly believe in? Who am I without all these masks? What happens if I just take all these masks off? And it's okay if if those answers aren't really clear yet. You find yourself even in social moments, they may even feel pretty draining. You might feel like you're pretending to be someone else, even around the people that you love being around, the people that rock with you, right? And you're just like not the same. Even decisions become overwhelming because the usual ways of making them just aren't working. So everything starts to feel heavier. This is when deep questions about meaning and purpose begin to arise, right? Not because something is inherently wrong, but because your perspective it's expanding, right? And if these questions have been on your mind, definitely let me know. But you might even feel isolated, even around others. Authentic connection can actually be challenging when you're uncertain about yourself. It's really hard to connect because you're kind of in this liminal space, right? Our culture doesn't teach us how to hold space for this level of uncertainty. It expects answers, it expects plans and certainty from the get go, right? And so many begin exploring around this stage, like spirituality, maybe therapy, philosophy, as a way to understand this new territory, because you find that these questions that you're asking, they hold spiritual depth, right? They're not like practical questions that are going to give you practical answers. And these questions are invitations to reconnect with the divinity within you. And for me, when I was in this space, that's when I was introduced to plant medicines, and I've done some plant medicine journeys to help me really reconnect with that depth. I started to explore what does it mean to be a divine being, not from the religious standpoint. I grew up in a very religious household, and that didn't really connect with me. So I had all these really interesting spiritual questions that couldn't be answered. And then when I found my mentor and I met my partner who's very spiritually sound, and all those things just started to come together, right? And so this stage is less emptiness, it's more fertile ground. It's breaking down old parts to allow growth, right? And you just need to be willing to sit with not knowing, which I know is hard for y'all, but it is absolutely necessary, right? Because there is a mystery to life in itself. Like, we're not going to know everything. We're not meant to know everything. And we're not meant to know everything moment to moment, right? There's a mystery to life. And there's such infinite knowledge and infinite wisdom, you couldn't be able to learn it in a lifetime anyway. When you have this deep desire to be certain, to know something, it's because your nervous system just wants safety. So it's like, okay, what's another way that I can get that sense of safety? Or how can I give it to myself without spinning in the meaning of things, of the knowing, of the certainty of things, right? Let me check. Let me just get some water. I hope some of this is making sense. I hope it's helpful. You could always ask questions. You could ask questions in the replay too. I always come back and check the comments. But before we move forward, let's just pause and take a breath. Woo, it's a lot of information. Wherever you are in this process and this journey, I want you to just notice what's coming up for you right now. Um, we've talked about a deep part of you that's kind of outgrowing a life that no longer fits, that feeling of being lost, unsettled, and stretched maybe in ways that you might not have expected. And so this journey that you're on, it's layered, right? It's complex, it's deeply personal, and it's like peeling back old skin or unfolding a story that you thought you already knew. It it starts as complex, but over time, as you begin to peel away, it actually becomes rather simple. It really, really does. It's hard to trust that in the moment, but it does simplify itself once we allow ourselves. I always say when you go through the muck, right? Once you allow yourself to just kind of go through that journey and you come on the other side of it, you're like, oh my God, it was pretty simple, right? And I know this isn't easy. It can feel pretty confusing and unsettling. And Again, that's okay. That's part of the journey. You're not meant to have it all figured out right now. So we can just let that story go. All right. Done with that. And so this moment of not knowing, this restlessness is it's actually a beautiful sign that something important is shifting inside of you. And if this feels overwhelming, know that you're not alone, right? Many who sort of walk this path find themselves caught between the past and what's next, unsure how to move forward without losing themselves. Okay, let me check the chat. I see something here. I feel like I feel like I'm between two worlds. Like if I don't know the Bible, I cannot elevate. I feel like I'm more spiritually connected, but something keep on telling me I need to know the Bible. Huh, interesting. Um, all right, Isabella, take care of yourself. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's an interesting place to be. So if you I always say whatever you're feeling prompted to do, experiment with that, with the understanding that it will evolve. Right? I went through this stage, and I'll share this with somebody in the chat. When my brother passed away, um, what 3 years now, I I feel like my whole life has been a journey of understanding death and loss and all this thing. So I've made it a point to really get comfortable with this idea, not to get morbid with y'all. This is a whole. I'm getting sidetracked, but I want to address this. And I went through this stage of like, I really need to understand death. I need to understand it. And I read a lot of books. There was a specific series that I went down that I piled on, and I read and I read and I read. I watched YouTube videos, and I just went through this. I just consumed myself with that topic. And then now I'm like, okay, I had enough. Did I get what I really needed? Not necessarily, but I felt at peace with what was being presented to me. So I say this to you to say that if you're feeling the nudge to head in a specific direction, be open to exploring it without any attachment to the outcome. Also, without the attachment to know what it means to go down this path, right? As long as it's not harming you or harming other people, it's kind of your own process, your own evolution, then just experiment, right? Just experiment with whatever is coming up without the attachment that it has to be something, it has to look a certain way, it has to be anything. Okay. Let me see. Yes, my partner's in the chat. Um, Experiment with the thing that's calling for your attention. Yeah, just experiment. Life is one big experiment. Okay, y'all. I'm gonna let y'all know no one knows what they're doing. I'm up here talking to y'all because I've just had some experiences of my own personal experiences, professional experiences, but I too don't know everything. Okay, I don't know everything. I just know a few things that personally resonated with me and that I'm sharing with y'all, and hopefully we can all elevate together and enhance our quality of lives and live better lives and just enjoy this journey as much as we can, right? And the no attachment thing, it's a process, right? It's a process, but there are opportunities there to practice some of that stuff, right? Um, all right. So, what did I say last time? Where was I? All right. Now that I have, yes. So, someone in the chat, my partner, said, like a child exploring their curiosity, the fun of evolving for sure. Yes. The world is literally your canvas. It is your backyard. Explore it. All right. Someone said, I appreciate discipline is beauty. I appreciate your channel. Let's see. Helps me think outside the box and it makes me ask questions to grow. Aw, I'm glad that it does. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So I have ideas for navigating each stage of this process, all the stages that we just mentioned. But this video is already full, right? It has a lot of wisdom and feelings that can take time to sit with. So I don't want to like dump all this stuff at you. But I just want to share one practical, powerful tool with you. It was already mentioned in the chat, um, but it's so simple, it's so universal that you can come back to it again and again. And it's a tool that, if you trusted it and used it, could gently guide you through this whole experience, no matter where you are on the journey. And before I introduce it, just take another breath. I need it. And just check in with yourself, right? What part of this process feels most authentic to you right now? And just hold that, and let's move forward together. So I kept asking myself, if I had to just pick one practical tool, right? One thing that you could trust and use every day to powerfully transform how you move through this whole experience, what would it be? What single shift could make the biggest difference, no matter where you are on this journey? And that's when I realized it's the power of choosing curiosity over resistance. My partner mentioned the word curiosity in the chat. Curiosity is not just an intellectual exercise or a surface level, let's see what happens kind of thing. It's a deep, compassionate way of being with yourself and your experience. When you lean into curiosity, you're giving yourself permission to really notice what's alive inside, whether it's fear, grief, confusion, restlessness, or it could be positive emotion like, man, this I'm really interested in this thing, like we were just talking about earlier, right? Without immediately trying to fix, push away, or even numb those feelings, or without trying to get external validation. Like, you are your own guru. Remember that, right? You know yourself better than anyone else. You know your experiences better than anyone else. Sometimes it's okay to kind of like check in, but know that you have the final answer. Okay. Like, you don't need too much external validation. But curiosity, it's about becoming a kind witness to your thoughts, your feelings, and all the bodily sensations, noticing them, meeting them with a soft, open attention instead of pushing them away or getting stuck in them. And here's the power of curiosity: it creates a space inside you where change can happen naturally. And so this simple shift, say that 3 times, inviting curiosity, can change how you relate to your confusion, your restlessness, your uncertainty. Instead of feeling trapped in old patterns, right? You start to see them as part of this journey, something to explore rather than resist, right? So it's like, I'm really uncertain about this next step. And these are conversations I have with myself, right? Out loud. Like, I'm just walking around talking to myself. I'm like, like, what is it about this feeling that's making me feel uncertain? And just, this is curiosity. This is exploration. Just getting curious with everything that comes up, because the more that you're curious about it, the more that it will reveal itself to you. And the deeper you go, the more that you will get the feedback that you need to kind of make sense. And sometimes not everything has an answer. I will say that. Some things just don't have an answer. And some things we're not privy to, right? If you look at it on a spiritual level. So not everything will have an answer. And so it's being okay with that for the time being, and understanding that maybe the answer will show itself as I just continue to just live and be, right? As I continue to be an active participant in my life, right? And so curiosity allows everything to slow down. It slows down the overwhelm, it invites insight, it allows compassion to grow, right? It helps you to connect with your own deeper wisdom. And importantly, this isn't about rushing to some solution or a big breakthrough. I had a client who was really stuck on this, the meaning of certain things that were happening in his life. And I said to him, I was like, I know you really want to know this thing, the reason for all the things that were happening in his life. We really want to know. And we can get trapped in this as well. And he really wanted to have this powerful breakthrough that would help connect all the dots so that everything in his life would finally make sense. And then I said to him, like, even if you had this powerful breakthrough, you wouldn't even be ready to receive it. And I said it as compassionately as I could, because even if we have the knowledge, our body, mentally, our nervous system wouldn't even be ready to receive it. It's almost like when you know that one friend that you might have that you see that they're reckless, right? They might be making all these reckless decisions and you're just looking at them and you want to share that, like, you want to give them another insight, another solution, another perspective, but they're just not ready to hear you. They're not in that space of receiving. And so we are the same because we can't skip the steps in between, right? We have to go through these steps in order to be in full receiving mode, right? And I know that it can be really hard, right? But it's about honoring the process, allowing things to unfold in their own time and rhythm. Because when we start to micromanage our lives in this way, it causes an adverse reaction, right? It creates more resistance, it creates more inner conflict, right? And I know it can really be hard to stay curious when things feel very entangled and heavy because you just want that relief. But willingness, that willingness to notice with kindness, that's where the real transformation begins, right? So if you're willing to just try this one thing, showing up with curiosity for whatever is alive inside, you're literally giving yourself the most powerful tool for transformation in this moment, right? It is the foundation for everything else that comes after because you're going to reuse this tool over and over and over again. Okay, so curiosity is a game changer. And if you want a guided way to practice it and other tools that support this journey, my free mini course is designed just for this, and I'll remind you where to find it soon. Link in the bio. But as you move through this beautiful journey, it's important to remember we're about to wrap things up here, but it's important to remember that this isn't a quick fix or something to rush. I have clients who just want to rush on the other side, and I just mentioned one already to you. But, you know, it's important for us to get clear on what this journey looks like in the long run and what comes next for you. So I'm a huge proponent of integration. And I talk a lot about it because we can know a lot of this stuff, we read about it, but if we don't embody it, meaning integrate it into our daily lives, it doesn't become change, right? And it doesn't last. So integration is very important part of the process. And so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This journey is going to be uncomfortable because our culture doesn't make space for identity transitions. Right? You know, those people who, get those jobs, they stay in that job forever. And there's nothing wrong with that. That feels right to you. But there's an evolutionary process that happens in our identities. And sometimes we're invited to shift. And some of us welcome it and some of us don't. Right? We all have our timing. As you know, it's about that time. My cousin's gonna be home. She's gonna come through this door. I need to find a different day, maybe. She's gonna come walking through this door and she gonna be like, Francis, you want James Bond leaving Francis doing it? And I'm gonna be like, and then she gonna look at the setup and she'll be like, oh, you live? I'm like, yeah. So anyway, even though I sent a text. So that's gonna happen in a few minutes. But sometimes she stays in her car talking on the phone. So we'll see. Anyway. Um, yeah, so our culture doesn't make space for identity transitions, right? People are gonna be very confused by your changes. They're like, who is this person? Why has this changed? Right? You know, and some people, they might try to pull you back to who you were because the old version of you felt safe for them. They benefited from the old version of you, right? And so they're gonna try to reel you back in. And the universe in general will like send you little opportunities to see if you can deepen your integration. Some people call it tests. I don't call it tests. I call it opportunities to deepen and strengthen, right? And so, again, this evolutionary process, we're here for the long game. This isn't something that we're just going to like do really quickly. We want something quick. That's not what this is about, right? Identity evolution happens on its own timeline. And you can't force it to go any faster. You cannot skip any of these steps, right? But you can stop making it harder by not fighting it, not judging it, or trying to skip the stages, like I said, okay? And if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed by this, trust that there are a bunch of people in this chat that also can relate to this, right? They've met this edge, right? I've definitely been there myself, and the people around me have been there, so you're not alone, right? And I've created this free mini course called The Resistance Reset: How to Finally Get Unstuck Without Becoming Someone You're Not. It's for self aware souls who feel ready to change, but still find themselves hesitating, overthinking, or even holding back. And the link to join the waitlist for that course is in the description below. It launches in maybe 2 weeks. You all know how I roll, but it will be ready 2 weeks. 2 weeks. It's almost done. But it's designed to help you work with any of your resistance, any stuck feelings that you're experiencing, and not against it. Right. So, one thing I really want you to think about, again, we're nearing the end, who in your life can hold space for your uncertainty without trying to fix you, right? Without trying to make changes. And if you don't have people like that right now, finding them needs to be a top priority. And remember, reaching out for support and community is strength. I always say that it's easy to be alone, right? It's so easy. Take care, discipline is beauty. Uh, um, Interdependence is a powerful strength. People have a hard time leaning on each other, right? But interdependence is the true growth and it's the true wealth of life. Being able to lean uh, towards others. It takes real courage to let go of a life that really looks good on paper for the possibility of a life that feels really amazing on the inside. And not everyone will understand this choice, whatever choice you decide to make. That's totally okay. You're not really doing this for them, right? At the end of the day, you're going to be waking up and looking at yourself in the mirror, right? And you're going to sit with that truth, whatever that truth is for you. All right, so next week we're going to talk about how to make decisions when you're sort of in this in between space. How do you choose when your old decision making criteria doesn't work anymore, right? How do you trust yourself when you're not sure who yourself is? Okay, and if this resonates with you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Let me know which stage actually feels most familiar for you. Are you in the loosening stage, the void, the emerging, or maybe you're cycling between them? I definitely went back and forth between the void, the emerging, the void, 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 emerging, void, void. All right. And know this, lots of people watching this video know that they're going through the exact same thing. Okay. And just know that you'll see you're not the only one that's questioning everything, not the only one who feels like they're living someone else's life. You're part of a larger awakening that's happening right now, as you can see with the world. Like all this stuff is happening, and it's a wild time to be alive right now. And if you're looking for a real community to think deeper, to get honest with, and make lasting change, join my Thrive newsletter. It's a space for showing up, sharing the messy stuff, the messy side of growth, and we just kind of grow together, right? All right, my final thought. What feels like falling apart might actually be coming together in a way that you never expected to. And what feels like getting lost might be the beginning of finding out who you truly are. And that person, they're worth every uncomfortable moment of this transition. All right, they're worth every bit of it. All right. So definitely, I didn't say like, but hopefully y'all like the video, share it. Definitely subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it and help me grow this channel, help me get this message far and wide. And I'll see you next week where we dive into decision making from this new place of authenticity. And I'll see you on the other side of change. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for being here. Take care.